We are going to move on then. Thank you. That was a great, fulsome debate. We're going to move on to the next
lady's way nicer than the French
section
guy.
where it's a 1-minute response for this question. So Donald Trump said again yesterday, I'm sure we all know, the 25% tariffs are coming on March the 4th. Only days later, one of you will become the prime minister of this country. What is your first move? And again, this was drawn ahead of time. And Mr. Bayless, your start.
So, first of all, I don't take him at his
Do you
word.
think any of them is going to mention the election?
But I would expect him to hit us beforehand, and I expect him to hit us again. What he's going to do is look at industries where he has overcapacity in the United States, because he'll be thinking that's going to hurt the American economy the least, I should say. So where I'm going to be looking at softwood lumber, and I'm going to be looking at dairy as the next two industries he's going to attack. And what we're going to be doing is supporting those industries completely. We're not going to let them take our jobs away. And we're going to be putting into place very intelligent counter tariffs. And then we're going to be waiting. And we're going to be waiting. Because he's not going to stop until he gets the lesson that he can't get away with this. Then what I am going to do is, as I said, I will go down and meet with President Sheinbaum of Mexico, come together with her and say, listen, let's hold the fort together.
This is all before he declares an election,
on his 25% tariff bluff. Let's just call it. Tell him, do it. And let's take everything that he already took from us off the table.
Mr. Bayless, thank you. Ms. Freeland, you're up next. And again, days later, it's you that becomes prime minister. What is your first move?
My first move is dollar for dollar retaliation. And let me be very clear with President Trump.
Are you going to pass that? Are you going to pass it through the House? If I'm prime minister,
I will not flinch. We will retaliate. If you hit us, we will hit back. But our retaliation will be a lot smarter than their dumb tariffs. And it's the Wall Street Journal, usually a supporter of Trump, that described this Trump effort as dumb. Canada, by contrast, is going to be smart. We are going to have a targeted retaliation that exerts maximum pain in the U.S. and does minimum harm to us. We're going to hit Trump's best friends. I will impose a 100% tariff on Teslas. I'm going to hit Wisconsin dairy. I'm going to hit Florida orange juice. And you are going to see a stock market reaction. You're going to see people like the American Farm Bureau complaining about the Canadian potash they need that costs more. And that reaction, that pain, will cause Trump ultimately to back down, just like he did last time.
Ms. Gould, you're up next. Only days later, you become prime minister. What's your first move?
My very first move is to call a meeting with the Council of the Federation and bring the premiers together to make sure that we share our plan for Canada, because this is every single province and territory, every business leader in our country, every union leader, every single Canadian, and then to share the plan with the entire country, because Canadians deserve to know what we are doing. Absolutely, we retaliate against Donald Trump. We do a major Team Canada approach in the United States where we engage with American leaders, but also American citizens, because it is American citizens who are going to feel the impact of these tariffs. And we need to let them know that this is not Canada's decision. This is the decision of the United States. And I'm going to call on Canadians to stop going to Florida, to stop buying Florida orange juice, because that's a $50 billion economy in that state alone. Canadians matter to the United States.
Ms. Gould, thank you kindly. Mr. Carney, days later, you become prime minister. What's your first move?
Well, I'll pick up on a few things. First, entirely agree with what Karina just said. First item, I would call it a First Ministers meeting as opposed to a Council of Federations, but First Ministers meeting, sharing the plan, but also developing our broader response, our broader domestic response, including project. Secondly, entirely agree with Christia. Dollar for dollar tariffs, maximum impact on the United States, minimal impact here in Canada. Thirdly, put them on notice on the broader aspects of our commercial relationship. We are their largest supplier of energy. We are their largest supplier of electricity. We are their largest supplier of uranium. I could go on, but I will exhaust all my time. There is the first signs in the United States now of the economic impact of the Trump policies. We will amplify that, and that will begin to create the leverage. And then I will call President Trump.
And then you'll call President Trump.
Well, it's going to be a long day.
Well, okay, Mr. Carter. So I'm going to start. This is supposed to be with Ms. Freeland as well on this one because it was previously drawn. As Prime Minister, and we're coming back to what we were talking about when it comes to managing the nation's books. How would you manage the nation's books at this critical time? And of course, you were the former finance minister.
Yeah, well, I would start by pushing back very forcefully against conservatives who talk Canada down. The reality is Canada has a strong fiscal position. We have a AAA credit rating, and we have the lowest debt and the lowest deficit in the G7. That was important for me to maintain a fiscally responsible position because I know that we have needed to keep our fiscal firepower dry because I saw that Trump was coming. Today, we need to seize the opportunity that Trump presents us to harness this wave of Canadian patriotism and to build a Canadian economy which is even stronger with more jobs, more investment, more prosperity. And critically, we need to remember that standing up to Trump is the foundation of all economic policies, and there could be some pain involved. The government has to be there to support workers, to support businesses. As Prime Minister, you have my commitment that I'll do that.
Mr. Bayless, your 1 minute starts now.
So as I mentioned, I'm going to bring fiscal discipline to Ottawa. Now, when I say that, a lot of people think, okay, is he going to cut services or is he going to raise taxes? It's neither. There's a third option, which is to increase productivity. So if we increase productivity, we increase richness, we increase our tax base and everything. Now, as a business owner, I've done that. When I brought a company from 2 people to 1,000, I know how to invest intelligently to increase productivity. Added to that, as I mentioned, I've also been elected. So I'm the one person here that understands both sides of the coin. And I'm going to use that skill set to then say, okay, how do we put in place government programs that are going to help the economy work, government programs that are going to be à la bénéfice, to the benefit of businesses, and take away ones that are hurting, such as, for example, I wrote well over a year ago that the increase in capital gains was a very bad idea because it goes against what we want. It discourages investments when we want to encourage them.
Ms. Gould, you're up next.
Thank you, Hannah. Look, I'm all for increasing productivity. And in fact, last week, I announced a plan to create 1 million new entrepreneurs in this country. I'm the daughter of a small business owner. I grew up working in the family business, and I think we need to unleash that economic potential. But if someone tells you that they're going to balance the books in a very short period of time, increasing our productivity in that period of time is not going to be sufficient. And at a time when we are facing potentially one of the greatest economic shocks our country has experienced, we need to ensure that the government can be there for Canadians, like the federal government was during the pandemic with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the business loan, as well as the wage subsidy, because we will win against Donald Trump. But we need to ensure that Canadians have the income support they need and the jobs to get to when we eventually win. Thank you.
Mr. Carney, the last in the 1 minute.
Okay. Well, it was my privilege to work with Paul Martin when he balanced the books and kept the books balanced. And one of the lessons of that is the need for government to continue to focus on how effectively it is spending precious taxpayers' dollars. In other words, a focus on the outcomes of programs as opposed to the dollars going in. And one thing you can see is that the scale of increase in spending and the scale of increase in the public service hasn't been matched by greater productivity in certain areas. So the focus does have to go to that in order to create the room and maintain the room for those social programs, because that is what the Liberal Party is about. One of the core things, which is to manage responsibly our fiscal position so that we can support the vulnerable in society, so we can move forward as a society. So we need to spend less and invest more as a country.
This is a 1 minute, so each of you are going to get 1 minute to respond to this. In 2015, Justin Trudeau swept to power in large part because young Canadians, they liked him, they voted for him. But fast forward to today, that age group is really moving towards the right. What will you do as Prime Minister to win back the support of that age group?
Thanks, Hannah. Well, maybe the debate so far is indicative of why young people are not supporting the Liberals right now, because we're not talking about the issues that matter to them. We talked a little bit about housing, but that's one of the biggest challenges that young people are facing right now.
She's searching her brain. What do young people care about?
My plan to really supercharge our housing investments, but also to ensure that young people can actually enter the housing market will make a difference in that regard. We're not talking about the cost of living, on how challenging it is to be a young person these days, and the dream of owning a home or having that prosperity that's just not there. And if I can be honest, one of the things that we did was we lost trust of younger people because we weren't focused on the issues.
That's another one that Carney differed with them on,
so my
Justin
pledge
Trudeau
as Prime Minister is to
he didn't
ensure
approve of
that
the
I am
capital
building
gains
a
tax.
future for you as young people and for future generations.
Thank you, Ms. Gould. Frank Baylis, you're up next.
So for young people, there's a few things that are critically important. First of all, let's talk about education. We've done something very silly. By the way, my 1 minute is not on. Should it be on?
I'll keep track.
Okay, sorry about that. So,
that was very honest.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
And you'll get those extra seconds.
No problem. So what I was going to say is that, first of all, I want to see real investments in our universities. We've been squeezing our universities, and quite frankly, that's the dumbest thing we should be doing, because that's the foundation of an advanced economy. So I want young people to know that I will be completely supporting your education. Second thing is, they are the ones that are going to find it hardest to buy a home. So we need to help them buy a home. And there's two things we can do. Well, there's many things, but two things that I'm proposing is to increase the amount for the first home savings account. It hasn't kept up with inflation in that. So we need to increase the amount of money that people can put aside so they can buy a home. And the second thing we need to do is really keep the investments going, which have been lacking for so long, in social housing. The government's got out of social housing, and there's a knock-on effect that infects everybody when that happens. So we need to get back into social housing. We need to help young people buy their homes. And what we need to do, when I get the government in order, what will happen is you'll have more money in your pocket. It'll take a little bit of time, but you will be able to buy a home.
Ms. Freeland, your 1 minute is
There's a
now.
good, he elaborated on the housing thing, but he says the schooling thing.
Well, it's honest too. It'll take
no
some time,
details
right?
at all, though.
It's not going to be instant day one. Like,
yeah,
you need to understand that too.
I agree. I think him and Carney are both kind of even Karina actually a little bit is kind of leveraging the realistic approach to things that they're trying to angle it right?
Super. If we have Carney or Bayless, someone who's just going to address these major issues, I think that's still better than being stuck with Trudeau till October. Which is what the situation was in December. So at this point, I'm hopeful we're going to get out of it. I just don't think these people have what it takes to secure the next actual term. You know what I mean? Like, at best, they're going to be able to not get voted with a vote of non-confidence before they're forced to call an election in October for their situations, in my opinion. But I
feel like they need to just
change regardless who. I just don't see that in Chrystia Freeland or Karina Gould at all. But I'm not a liberal.
The only thing that I could see because you know what the thing is they need to call an election right away, because the situation can realistically only get worse if they don't, right? Like, what are you going to be able to accomplish before an election has to happen?
Trust,
and
you know what I mean? And give a referendum.
Beyond that,
the next election is essentially a referendum on how we're going to move forward as a country, right? And I think that's
beyond that,
what we need.
You're not going to be able to kind of do away with the past administration if you've been running it for the last few months, right? People are going to be like, oh, well, we tried you for 5 months. You weren't able to fix it that fast. So out with the old and with the new, right? Like, you want to keep things fresh when you have it there as you're still a fresh face, I
was there in 2015. I had been a backbench MP for 2 years, and I remember how electric that campaign was. And the reason we won, at the heart of it, was
I don't know what the school funding thing was even. He didn't even give any details on it. He said he's going to support their schooling,
including young Canadians, were feeling. And we recognized and identified that Stephen Harper led a lackluster recovery from the 2008 financial crisis. We pointed that out, and we said we are going to invest for jobs and growth. Today, we need to do the same thing, and we need to focus on affordability for young people. I have a plan to do that. Cut taxes for first-time home buyers. Cut taxes for the middle class. 100,000 new childcare places, cap credit card fees. We need to be there for young Canadians so that they can know if they work hard, study hard in the free trade schools I will offer them, they can have a great Canadian middle-class life.
Mr. Carney, you're next.
Okay. Are we going to talk about housing?
We're getting there.
Okay, good. Because housing is central to this, but I want to add to the opportunity set for younger Canadians, which has shrunk in recent years. Let's expand it. Let's expand it in all aspects of what we're doing. First and foremost, it's a time to build, as Ms. Freeland just said, focus on infrastructure, building this economy out. There is a huge range of opportunities that comes. As I say, for the next 25 years, being in the trades, fantastic if we follow through with the promise there. That's the first. The second is, as Mr. Bayless said, let's look at our universities. Their funding is being squeezed and has been squeezed, and it's been made up by having foreign students. That's come to an end. We need to be there for our universities.
Okay.
So we'll miss the
See, he's going to elaborate on the point. Thank you.
opportunity. Thirdly, we need broad-based skills training. The federal government has a role there. We need to leverage AI and others to deliver it.
Okay. How will you differentiate yourself from the current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau? Start with yourself, Ms. Freeland.
I'm actually going to carry on with the previous theme because
What do you mean?
I still might come back and ask you, though.
We haven't
That's not the question.
touched on something really important to Canada, and that actually is an integral part of our energy security future and is a really positive story. And that is Indigenous participation in energy projects.
It has nothing to do with what she's
I was
asking.
so
What a
proud to be
virtue
able to
signal.
do as finance minister is create
Like it does,
a
but it's definitely
$5
not
billion
the question.
Indigenous loan guarantee program to allow Indigenous direct
The question was, what are you going to do to distance yourself from Trudeau?
Oh, really? I thought they were still
participation,
talking about the pipelines.
ownership
So I
of
just
natural
assumed from the
resource
answer.
projects,
Holy
energy
crap.
projects. This is transformational for Canada. And I think that we really need to embrace the fact that we are a country that can move forward with Indigenous prosperity. And we are a country whose path to reconciliation can include Indigenous people in Canada being partners in building the energy security we need today more than ever.
Okay, thanks. And I will come back with that other question. So I'm going to go back to my original
you let her
question in
talk
this
then?
debate. How will you differentiate yourself from Prime Minister Trudeau?
Sure. Let me just first start by saying that I think it's wonderful what you raised, Christia. It's just that Indigenous reconciliation is about more than a relationship with natural resources. And this is something that I think we can be extraordinarily proud of. The legacy.
Can you rewind that? I can't hear
Prime
anything
Minister
she's saying. She's laughing too loud.
Back to my original question in this debate. How will you differentiate yourself from Prime Minister Trudeau?
Sure. Let me just first start by saying that I think it's wonderful what you raised, Christia. It's just that Indigenous reconciliation is about more than a relationship with natural resources. And this is something that I think we can be extraordinarily proud of, the legacy that Prime Minister Trudeau has put in place when it comes to reconciliation. And we need to be very mindful that a Pierre Poilievre-led Conservative government will back away and backtrack on this really important relationship.
Again, the question was, how are you going to differentiate from Trudeau?
That Canada has with Indigenous peoples. And I also just want to say that I'm actually really proud of a lot of the work that we did as a government, whether it was the Canada Child Benefit that has lifted over 500,000 kids out of poverty, the early learning and childcare agreements, or the work that we did on fighting climate change. I'm proud of that legacy and that record, and I think all Liberals can be proud of that. Where I see a big difference is in making sure that we stay and I stay connected to the grassroots. And this is something that as Liberals, I want to talk to you specifically about. We need to hear your voices. We need to hear your ideas, because it is always the Liberal membership, the Liberal grassroots that provides the next big idea for Canada and for Canadians. And so my pledge to you is to ensure that we have a robust and vibrant party that is connected in our communities.
Again, the question was, how will you differentiate from Trudeau? Like, what the hell are you talking about?
That's what I was saying is these guys are going to have such a hard time with it. Like they're literally his
Just
front
why are
benchers.
you even in this race? Go home. Uninstall.
Listening to Canadians and making sure
do you
that
know
we
what
can
uninstall
build
means?
that
Yes, I do.
future that we want
Okay, so
and
be careful
lead
with that
Canada ambitiously
It means you're that bad. Just get it. Just stop it. Just stop trying to do what you're
Okay.
trying to do.
into the 21st century.
So that's how you'll differentiate yourself from Mr. Trudeau?
I'm very proud of the record that we have. We've made some mistakes.
You're not
Absolutely.
answering.
Nobody is perfect, but we've done a lot of good
He's not
things
going
for
to.
this
That's the
country.
answer.
And I think we need to build on that success. I can pinpoint the moment following the pandemic when inflation was getting out of control and Canadians were saying to all of us collectively as a government, they were saying we need help with the cost of living and we were too late to the game to address those real needs. My pledge to you is to listen to you and to respond to what your needs are today and for the future.
Thank you, Ms. Gould. Mr. Bayless, you're up next. How will you differentiate yourself from Mr. Trudeau?
So I would say that I'm the candidate here that is the most distant from Mr. Trudeau. I was elected, it was over 6 years ago since I've been in the government. And then I was not a minister, so I've not been a minister with Mr. Trudeau's government, nor have I been an economic advisor. Where I will differentiate myself greatly is that I'll be focused much more on the economy. I'll be focused on creating wealth. I'll be focused on getting more money into Canadians' pockets. That's what I'm good at. I'm also going to look at building an innovation-based economy. So I really want to do that. That's going to be my main focus. You need both when you're in government. You need wealth creation and you need wealth redistribution. We've done a lot of wealth redistribution to the point that we're renouncing programs we can't even pay for. And we're letting programs such as healthcare fall apart. So what I want to do is get back in there. I'm a big supporter of these programs, so I want to make sure we have the funds to pay for them. That's going to be where I'm going to be much different from the previous government.
Okay,
Thank you
Mr.
for
Bayless,
answering
thank
the
you for
question.
that.
You know, it's such an easy win for Frank
Yeah.
there. Answer the question. Boom. W. Like, it's just, come on. Like,
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Carney,
Yeah.
you're up next.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Look, I'm different in the following respects.
Answering the
First,
question.
focus on the economy. Laser focus on the economy, and that means good jobs, people's wages growing faster than inflation. It means getting prices down. It means building homes. It means building a future for this country. Secondly, I'm much more hands-on. I'm much more of a hands-on person, hands-on manager. I focus on results and getting things done. Thirdly, and I've heard this, I'm fortunate to have support in the caucus. I hear directly from those supporters about
Trudeau
more
doesn't have the
regular
support.
and two-way dialogue with the caucus. I meet with my supporters virtually during the course of this leadership campaign to hear their ideas, to hear their energy, to hear what's going on, what they're seeing on the ground, to share my perspectives in order to move forward.
Okay, and Ms. Freeland, I am going to come back to you on this one. I only have about 30 seconds on
really
this.
know if
How
you can
would
be
you
blamed for
differentiate
Brexit.
yourself after being in the Justin Trudeau government for all of these years?
Well, first of all, we as liberals
talking to
have
chat.
to be proud of the great things
Still
our
not
government
answering.
has done. National system of early learning and childcare,
This is the second opportunity to answer the question.
Yeah, that's what I thought he was going to say too,
Canada
CB.
Child Benefit, support for seniors, CETA, NAFTA. We have done a lot, and we need to remind Canadians about that. But, you know, for me, this campaign has been a personal liberation, and I am my own person, and it is great. I personally do not believe in a style of leadership, which is a one-man band. I think that the best kind of leadership is collaborative and listening, and that's how I'm running my campaign.
She kind
That's
of
been a
answered there.
recurring.
She kind
Yeah,
of
that's been a
answered.
recurring. And she kind of copied Carney's criticism of him too, because that's something Carney's been saying a lot. Is that something that's going to differentiate me? Is that I'm more of a, like, I'm better at delegating tasks and using all of the resources available to me, making sure that my whole team is working and I'm not just doing everything by myself.
I believe that we have to be practical and we have to focus on jobs and growth.
Okay.
But most importantly, I am a ferocious mother, and I will fight for Canada with the same ferocity that I fight for my kids. I will fight for your kids too. And the reason I am running is I am the leader who can stand up to Donald Trump and win.
But
Okay,
listen
we
to
still have-
Karina Gould and Chrystia Freeland. I swear, I don't understand. Like, those two are just. Honestly,
yeah, you know,
if I just
Krista,
heard
I feel like
Bayless
she's
and
a little
Carney
bit.
go back and forth. I don't think it would have been as bad. But the fact that it was like those two had so much talking time, like, how much time did did they eat up with just
A
nonsensical
lot.
ranting?
But that's part, honestly, that's a strength of them, is they kind of are more aware of how these environments work and how you have to just kind of take the time whenever you can. I think that the way she doesn't do it with Trump for some reason, but Krista Freeland's got a very subtle way of throwing shade at people that I think that they could have used a lot more to their advantage here. Like I think Carney and all these people, actually, when they were talking about Polyev or they're talking about Trump, it needs to just be like a slight little, like maybe make a little joke or something in the middle of it. Like it's fine to throw digs, but when you're acting like this is like a policy point that you have, that you oppose these people, and you're just repeating something that a lot of people have already heard 100 times anyways, right? These aren't new criticisms with Polyev. They're the same ones they've been using for the last like year and a half at least, right? Yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit disappointing. I think that like if you're going to throw shade in the debate, that's fine. Because I mean, he's ultimately who they're going to be up against, right? He's who they're going to be up against in the general.
I honestly do see them going at each other a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think it matters anyways. I think most of us are going to vote for Carney. I think he's the one who just seemed to have the best understanding of the situation compared to the rest. And he's also willing to admit there's a problem. I think that's kind of the issue with Karina Gould and Krista Freeland, is they can't admit that there's a problem or they're part of the problem. So they have to try and somehow hedge around this whole thing. It's just so pointless. Like the fact that they're running is just stupid. I think that they should take a term off, go do something else with their lives for a bit, and then come back. You know what I mean? Like most of the liberals should just, you know, at this point, I just don't understand why they think
Northwest
this is a good
Coast
idea, but
said as well, you have to remember they're not talking to hard conservatives.
I don't even
and I just
consider myself
think
a
that,
hard conservative. But
No. I think he's talking to somebody in the chat, but I was just saying I was just going to comment that even people who aren't hard conservatives, I think it comes off as weaker when you make it such a central point of your talking that the other person is such a boogeyman, right? Like when Pierre Poilievre doesn't sound like, if he's going off about Mark Carney for too long, it's like, okay, come on, get on with it, right? But if he makes a little dig, he just calls him carbon tax Carney or whatever, or the carbon Trudeau liberals. It's kind of like, it's not even a real diss. It's just kind of like a slight remark in the middle. Just comes off better.
I'm so
okay.
done with
All
this.
right. Yeah. Justice is dying
as
here.
much as I just got a migraine.
Have a good one.